Ilara wiped the polished floor of the palace corridor, her hands moving quickly but carefully. The Varen Palace was unlike any place she had ever known. Towering crystal walls shimmered with colors she could not name, and the air carried a faint hum, as if the building itself was alive. She had been a maid here for only a few months, but already she had learned the rules. Never anger the dragons, never question the prince, and always move quietly as if she were part of the palace shadows. Today her task was simple yet dangerous. She had to clean the dragon chambers. The dragons themselves were magnificent and terrifying. Valix, the prince's personal dragon, lay coiled in his chamber, scales glinting in shades of emerald and gold. Its eyes were intelligent, watching her every movement, the pupils narrowing whenever she came too close. Ilara swallowed her fear and carried a bucket of water and soft cloths. One wrong move, one sudden twitch, and she could be more than just a maid in trouble. As she stepped closer to Valix, she felt the heat radiating from its massive body. The dragon's tail flicked lazily, knocking over a small pile of gold ornaments. Ilara crouched to pick them up, and Valix's head tilted, watching her. It hissed softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. She knew she had to keep calm. "Easy, Valix," she whispered, though she was unsure if the dragon understood words. Suddenly the dragon's head shot forward. Ilara froze. She had leaned too close, brushing a soft golden scale with her hand. The bite came in a flash, a powerful snap of jaws that clamped down on her arm. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and burning, and she cried out. Valix reared back, smoke curling from its nostrils as if startled by its own action. Guards rushed in, but Kaler, the young alien prince, appeared first, moving with a speed and grace that made him seem almost otherworldly. "Step back," Kaler commanded, his voice calm but full of authority. He knelt beside her, examining her arm with eyes that glimmered like molten metal. "What have you done to her?" he asked the palace doctors. They were panicked, speaking in hurried alien phrases, admitting that the bite was toxic and that they had no known cure for a human affected this way. Ilara's heart pounded. She had heard stories of humans bitten by dragons. Most did not survive. She wanted to scream, to beg for help, but her body was trembling too much. The poison was spreading and she felt it burn under her skin, moving like fire through her veins. And yet she noticed something strange. Alongside the pain there was a warmth, a flicker of understanding that she could not explain. Valix, the dragon that had bitten her, was lowering its head slightly, eyes fixed on her, almost worried. Kaler frowned. He had raised Valix since it was a hatchling, and the dragon had never shown fear, only power and pride. But now it seemed hesitant, almost aware. "Do not touch it," Kaler said to the guards. "It is frightened, not angry." His voice was low, carrying authority and knowledge that made even the dragons obey. Ilara, lying on the cold crystal floor, felt a strange connection with the dragon. It was as if its thoughts brushed against hers, soft and uncertain. Hours passed. The palace doctors tried everything they knew, alien remedies and human medicines, but nothing slowed the poison. Ilara's strength began to fade and she drifted in and out of consciousness. In her dreams she saw the dragon, not as a terrifying beast, but as a creature lonely and misunderstood. She could feel its confusion, its anger, its fear. And she understood something no alien had realized. Valix did not bite out of malice. It had reacted to her presence, to her fear, and perhaps to her courage. When she awoke, she was still in the dragon chambers, Kaler kneeling beside her. His expression was unreadable. "You are alive," he said simply. "That is unusual." She tried to speak, but her voice was weak, almost a whisper. Yet when Valix stepped closer, the dragon's massive head lowered until it was almost level with her. She reached out, trembling, and laid her hand against its snout. It did not snap, did not roar. It simply stayed, allowing her to touch it, to connect. Pain still ran through her body, but the warmth persisted, a strange, pulsing energy that seemed to link her and the dragon. She realized that she could feel its emotions, anger, fear, confusion, but also a sense of recognition, as if the dragon knew she was different from the others who served the palace. Kaler observed silently, eyes narrowing. He had raised dragons all his life, and never had one bonded with a human this way. He could feel the shift happening, the subtle, impossible connection that no technology or strength could create. The palace buzzed with whispers. Servants peeked from corridors. Guards kept their distance. Even the royal advisors, normally confident and strict, seemed unsure what to say. Here was a human maid, bitten by the prince's dragon, surviving against all odds. And more than surviving, forming a bond that could not be broken by fear or force. Ilara looked into Velix's eyes and spoke softly, "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon blinked, a slow, almost human gesture. The venom still burned, but she felt stronger in a way she could not name. Perhaps it was courage. Perhaps it was understanding. Or perhaps she thought humans were not as fragile as the aliens believed. Kaler finally spoke. "The palace will watch. Let us see what comes next." His voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it. This was no longer just a matter of survival. It was the beginning of something far greater, a moment that would change not only the palace, but the way humans were seen across Vera. Ilara, trembling but determined, reached for Velix once more. The dragon leaned into her hand, a small but undeniable acceptance. The first step of an impossible bond had been made. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by crystal walls and alien whispers, a human maid had begun something no one had ever imagined. A connection that could silence the palace and shake the beliefs of an entire world. Ilara sat on the cold floor of the dragon chambers, her arms still aching from Velix's bite. The palace doctors had done everything they could, yet the strange warmth inside her remained. It was not just pain or poison, it was something else, something alive, and it pulsed when the dragon moved near. Velix lay across the room, watching her with its golden green eyes. For the first time it seemed calm, even curious. The days passed slowly, and each moment with Velix became a lesson in patience. Ilara had learned quickly that fear would only make the dragon restless. She moved with soft, careful steps, never raising her voice, never making sudden gestures. When she fed Velix, she talked to it quietly, describing the colors of the palace walls, the hum of the crystals, and the sunlight that filtered through the windows. Sometimes the dragon would tilt its massive head, listening. Other times it would flick its tail or hum softly, almost like a reply. Kaler watched silently, fascinated and cautious. He had raised Velix since it was a hatchling, and yet he had never seen the dragon respond to anyone like this. Not even him. The bond between Ilara and Velix grew quietly, like a small flame flickering in the dark. The human maid discovered that when she placed her hand near the dragon's snout, she could feel its heartbeat, its emotions, and even something more. Thoughts that were not words but images and feelings. She began to understand the dragon in ways that no alien could. One evening Velix growled softly, a low rumbling sound that made the crystal walls vibrate. Ilara froze, expecting a sudden attack. But instead, the dragon lowered its massive head toward her. Carefully she reached out, placing her hand on the warm scales of its snout. A wave of strange energy pulsed through her body, and she realized she could sense the dragon's fear and hesitation, its confusion at feeling something new. Ilara whispered, "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to understand you." The dragon blinked slowly, a gesture that felt almost human. It had never blinked like that before. For the first time it seemed to trust her. Ilara's heart raced, both from fear and excitement. She had always known humans were fragile compared to Veran's strength, but now she felt something stronger: connection, empathy, courage. It was a new power she had never experienced, and she understood that Velix felt it too. Kaler approached quietly, watching. He had raised many dragons and understood their power, but this was different. A human, small and fragile, was forming a bond with his dragon that no alien science could explain. "Do you understand what you are doing?" he asked softly. Ilara nodded, though she was not entirely sure. She only knew that this bond was real and that it might be something the palace had never seen before. Over the next few days, Ilara experimented cautiously. She discovered that when she moved slowly and spoke softly, Velix followed her commands. Not perfectly, but enough to prove that the dragon was listening, thinking, and responding to her. She led it through small exercises, stepping over obstacles, touching objects on command, even tilting its head when she asked. Each small success brought a sense of accomplishment and deepened their trust. The palace watched from a distance. Guards whispered, servants peered around corners, and the royal advisors debated quietly. Humans were never expected to survive a dragon bite, let alone control a dragon's attention. Some were afraid, thinking this bond dangerous or unnatural. Others were curious, wondering if humans could offer something that Verans could not. Ilara herself felt the change. Her body still ached, but the venom that should have destroyed her seemed instead to have unlocked something. She could feel the dragon's thoughts in fragments, images of the skies it had flown through, the loneliness it had felt, even the pride it carried in protecting the prince. She learned to match her actions to its feelings, adjusting her movements, her voice, and her touch. One morning, Kaler summoned her to the balcony of the palace. Velix was perched nearby, its massive wings folded against its back. "You have learned quickly," Kaler said, his expression serious. "No human has ever done this. Tell me, what do you see?" Elara hesitated. "I see that he is not cruel," she said finally. "He is frightened, alone, and curious. He wants to understand, but no one has tried to speak to him like I am." Kaler studied her carefully. "And you are not afraid?" he asked. Elara shook her head. "I was at first. But fear does not help. He needs patience, and I think, maybe he wants to trust me. He listens to me in ways no one else can." Kaler nodded slowly. He understood the significance, even if he could not fully explain it. "Then perhaps humans are stronger than we believed," he said. "Not in muscle or fire, but in courage and mind. Perhaps this bond will teach us more than we thought possible." Elara smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at her. She returned to Velix's side, and the dragon nudged her gently with its massive head. She laughed softly, a sound that seemed to make the dragon hum. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the shimmering walls of the palace, a human and a dragon shared something new: understanding. Word began to spread quietly through the palace. A human maid had survived a dragon's bite and could communicate with it. Some were skeptical, others fearful, but all watched closely. Elara knew the danger was not over. The bond she had created was fragile, and the palace held many who would not understand or accept it. Yet she felt a spark of hope. She had faced a creature thought untouchable, survived its venom, and discovered a connection that could not be explained by fear or strength alone. This was only the beginning. Velix's eyes met hers, and she knew it too. They were no longer predator and prey. They were partners in a quiet, unspoken alliance. In that moment, Elara understood something that would guide her in the days ahead. Survival was not enough. She had to learn, to connect, and to prove that humans could be more than servants. They could be allies, guides, and even friends to the dragons of Vera. And Velix, fierce and proud, was the first to show the world just how much a human could accomplish. Elara had been in the palace for weeks since Velix's bite, and the bond between her and the dragon had grown stronger. She could sense Velix's moods before it moved, calm it with a word or gesture, and even guide it through small tasks the palace staff could never manage. But the palace was not ready to accept this. Whispers followed her through the corridors. "The human has too much power," some said. "She is dangerous." Others were curious, wondering how she could control a dragon without fear. Kaler stood beside her one morning watching Velix stretch its massive wings. "There are those in the palace who will not allow this bond to continue," he said quietly. "They will challenge us. You must prove yourself, Elara, not just to me but to everyone." Elara nodded. She understood. This was no longer just about surviving a bite, it was about showing that humans could stand alongside dragons and aliens, not beneath them. The challenge was announced in the palace arena. It was an ancient structure built for testing dragons and warriors. Today it would test a human. The rival faction, jealous of Elara's growing influence, insisted she face a series of trials with Velix, navigating obstacles, avoiding hazards, and demonstrating control over the dragon. The arena was filled with guards, servants, and curious citizens. Even Kaler's advisors watched nervously, unsure how this human would perform. Elara approached Velix, who lowered its massive head toward her. She ran her hand along its snout, whispering, "We can do this. Trust me." Velix responded with a low hum, a sound that vibrated through the floor. The arena doors opened, revealing a path filled with swinging fire traps, moving platforms, and creatures native to Vera designed to test dragons. The first test was simple in theory but terrifying in practice. Velix had to step across narrow ledges above a pit of glowing embers. Elara's voice was calm as she guided it. "Step slowly. Careful. Now turn left." Velix hesitated, then obeyed. The crowd gasped as the dragon moved gracefully, its massive body balanced by Elara's gentle instructions. Next came the moving platforms, shifting and tilting unpredictably. Elara held Velix's gaze, giving commands in soft tones. "Forward. Wait. Now jump." Velix's claws hit the platforms with precision, guided by Elara's timing. The dragon's wings flared slightly, adjusting balance. The audience leaned forward, amazed at the synchronization. A human and a dragon working as one. The final trial was the most dangerous. A creature known as a Karath, with spiked legs and glowing eyes, was released into the arena. Velix instinctively roared, flames curling around its snout. Elara stepped in front, holding her hand up. "No attack. Not yet. Watch me." Velix hesitated, muscles tensed, then obeyed. Together, they navigated around the Karath, Ilara's commands guiding the dragon to avoid unnecessary conflict while keeping the path clear. The creature eventually retreated, and the crowd erupted in astonishment. Ilara's mind raced. Every movement she made had to be precise. One wrong step, one poorly timed command, and Valix could react unpredictably. Yet, through fear and adrenaline, she felt a strange clarity. She could sense Valix's thoughts almost like a second heartbeat inside her own chest. This was more than training, it was partnership, trust, and understanding, things no force or technology could replicate. Kaler watched, pride hidden beneath his calm expression. He knew this display would change opinions. Humans were underestimated in the Varen Palace, seen as weak, fragile, and incapable of feats requiring courage or intelligence. But here, in front of the entire court, a human had guided a dragon through fire, moving hazards and dangerous creatures with nothing but patience, instinct, and empathy. The rival faction, previously smug and dismissive, scowled. They had expected failure. Yet here was a human maid, not only surviving but thriving, commanding the respect of the dragon and the attention of the audience. Some whispered that this could upset centuries of tradition. Others felt a quiet awe. The palace had never witnessed anything like it. When the trials ended, Valix lowered itself before Ilara, a gesture of submission and respect. She knelt, placing her hands on its head, feeling the warmth and power flowing through her. The connection was undeniable. Ilara had not only survived the challenge, she had mastered it, showing that humans were capable of understanding and guiding dragons in ways aliens could not. Afterwards, the audience slowly dispersed. Servants whispered in amazement, guards exchanged glances of disbelief, and even some of the rival faction's leaders seemed reluctant to speak against her. Kaler approached, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You have done more than I expected," he said softly. "You have shown that strength is not just muscle and power is not just fire. You have shown understanding, courage, and patience. Qualities the palace has long forgotten in its dragons and its people." Ilara, exhausted but exhilarated, smiled faintly. She realized that the challenge had been more than a test, it had been proof. Proof that humans, fragile though they appeared, possessed unique strengths that could rival even the most powerful dragons. She had earned Valix's trust and the court's attention, but more importantly she had discovered her own courage and intelligence. That night, back in the dragon chambers, Valix curled around her carefully, almost protectively. Ilara lay beside it, feeling the rise and fall of its massive chest. The palace was quiet, but she knew the whispers and eyes would return. There would be more challenges, more tests, and perhaps even attempts to undo what she had built. But she felt ready. For the first time, she realized that humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because few had taken the time to understand them. Valix had, and in return, Ilara had survived a dragon's bite, formed an unbreakable bond and silenced doubt in the palace, at least for now. The challenge had ended, but a greater journey was beginning. Humans and dragons, once thought impossible to connect, had proven they could work as one. And Ilara, the small, determined maid, had become the bridge between two worlds, a spark of change that could not be ignored. Ilara woke to the soft hum of the palace crystals, Valix lying beside her with its head resting near her shoulder. The warmth of its scales seeped through her tired body, a comforting presence after the trials of the arena. She had thought the challenge was the hardest test she would face, but today felt different. There was a quiet tension in the air, one that made the palace corridors feel heavier, as if something hidden was waiting to be discovered. Kaler appeared at the chamber entrance, his usual calm expression softened by curiosity. "Ilara," he said, "there is something you need to see. Something even I did not know about the dragons." Intrigued and cautious, Ilara followed him through winding hallways and narrow staircases, Valix padding silently beside her, scales brushing the walls. They reached a large hidden chamber, a place forbidden to most in the palace. The room was filled with ancient texts, strange devices, and massive crystal containers holding the eggs of dragons yet to be hatched. Ilara's eyes widened. She had heard whispers of the palace's secret, that dragons were not merely companions or weapons, but created specifically for the royal line. These eggs had been protected for centuries, hidden from prying eyes. Kaler stepped forward, his hand hovering over one of the containers. "These dragons were raised to serve the royal family," he explained. "But none have ever truly bonded with a human. Until now." He gestured toward Valix, who nudged Ilara gently, sensing her attention. "You have done something no one thought possible. You have survived the bite, and more than that, you have connected with him in a way we never imagined." Elara stepped closer to the eggs, feeling the faint pulse of life inside them. Something in her chest tightened. She realized that the bite, the warmth, and the strange energy she felt were not accidents. The venom, instead of destroying her, had opened a door. It had allowed her to understand Velix's thoughts, feelings, and instincts. She could sense the dragon's potential, their emotions, and even the ancient memories held in their species. Kaler watched her closely. "Humans are fragile compared to us," he said quietly. "But you, through your courage, empathy, and understanding, have unlocked something the dragons have never known. They can respond to you because you see them differently. You listen." Elara knelt beside Velix, tracing her hand along the dragon's snout. The bond felt stronger here, surrounded by the silent eggs, as if the future of the dragons themselves depended on her. She understood now that her role was more than a servant or a maid. She was a bridge between two worlds, human and dragon, fragile yet capable of shaping something far greater than herself. Suddenly one of the eggs trembled. Light flickered through the crystal container, casting shadows across the room. Velix stiffened, growling softly, and Elara felt the vibrations in her chest. She reached out instinctively, placing her hand on the container. A small crack appeared, and a tiny dragon hatchling emerged, looking around with curiosity and fear. The chamber erupted in wonder. Kaler's eyes widened. The palace staff would have gasped if they were here. The hatchling looked toward Velix and then to Elara. Its tiny body shivered, but instead of retreating, it moved toward her hand. Elara's heart leapt. She realized that this was proof of what she had suspected. The dragons could respond to humans in ways they never could with aliens alone. Velix nudged the hatchling gently, guiding it toward Elara. She held out her hand and the tiny dragon curled into her palm, its scales surprisingly warm. It chirped softly, a sound that made the chamber feel alive in a new way. Elara understood that her survival of the bite was more than luck. It was destiny. She had been chosen in a way to show the dragons a new path, a path where humans and dragons could work together, understand each other, and thrive. Kaler spoke softly, almost reverently. "You have changed the future of this palace, of the dragons, and of humanity here. You have shown that strength is not only in size or firepower. It is in patience, courage, and the willingness to understand." Elara looked at him, exhausted but exhilarated. She had never imagined being praised by a prince, let alone reshaping centuries of tradition with her actions. As the hours passed, she continued to work with Velix and the hatchling, teaching the tiny dragon to respond to her gestures and voice. Each movement, each sound, strengthened the connection. She could feel the intelligence and awareness growing in the hatchling, and she realized that her bond with Velix had set a precedent. Humans could guide dragons, calm them, and even teach them in ways aliens could not. Word would eventually spread through the palace, but for now, the chamber was quiet except for the hum of the crystals, the soft breathing of Velix, and the small chirps of the hatchling. Elara understood the true significance of the revelation. Humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because no one had yet seen the strength of their mind, heart, and courage. That night, she sat with Velix curled protectively around her. The hatchling slept in her lap, tiny wings twitching in dreams she could almost feel. Elara smiled faintly, realizing that she had survived the bite not just by chance, but because she had something the dragons and aliens had never expected: empathy, understanding, courage. She had taken the first steps toward a new era, one where humans were no longer merely servants but allies, guides, and friends. Kaler watched from the doorway, silently acknowledging that the human maid had done what no alien or dragon could. She had survived, bonded, and revealed a truth the palace could not ignore. Humans, fragile as they seemed, could achieve the impossible. Elara placed her hand on Velix's head and whispered, "We're just getting started." The dragon responded with a soft rumble of agreement, and for the first time she felt that humans and dragons were not just surviving together, they were changing the future. The palace was quiet in the early morning, sunlight spilling over the crystal walls and casting a soft glow across the corridors. Elara walked carefully, her steps light but confident, with Velix following close behind. The dragon's massive body moved silently despite its size, a reminder to the palace that this bond was no ordinary connection. For weeks, whispers had circulated about the human maid who survived a dragon's bite, tamed its fear, and even trained a hatchling. Today those whispers were about to become history. Kaler met her at the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. His eyes, bright with curiosity and pride, reflected the rising sun. "Today is the day the palace must accept what you have done," he said. "Not as a servant, not as a human, but as a force that can guide dragons in ways we never imagined." Ilara nodded, gripping the leather strap of her bag tightly. She felt nervous, but the fear that had gripped her when Valix first bit her was gone. Now there was courage born of understanding and trust. The council of the palace had gathered in the main hall, a room of towering arches and glimmering crystals. Advisors, guards and servants filled the space, their murmurs of doubt and curiosity echoing off the walls. They had demanded proof, a demonstration of the bond between human and dragon. Some were wary, convinced that a human should never hold sway over a creature as powerful as Valix. Others were intrigued, wanting to see if this maid could truly control the dragon and influence its actions. Ilara stepped into the hall, Valix following, its head lowered in quiet obedience. The crowd went silent, watching the unusual pair with a mix of fear and fascination. She knelt slightly, placing her hand on Valix's snout. "We will show them," she whispered, and the dragon's eyes met hers with understanding. This was more than obedience, it was partnership, a bond of trust that no command alone could create. The first demonstration was simple. Valix was to navigate the hall without harming a single person or object. Ilara guided it with subtle gestures, showing the court how precise and careful the dragon could be when directed by human understanding. Valix moved with surprising grace, avoiding furniture, people, and even the sunlight reflecting off the crystal walls. The audience gasped at each precise step, realizing that this small human had mastered a creature they had all thought uncontrollable. Next came the hatchling, now fully awake and energetic. Ilara guided it through a series of small tasks, touching objects, responding to simple commands and mimicking Valix's movements. The young dragon learned quickly, its trust in Ilara growing with every gesture. The crowd watched, astonished, as a human influenced not one, but two dragons, teaching them patience, control and cooperation. Kaler stepped forward, addressing the assembly. "You see what has been done here," he said. "Strength is not only in muscle or fire. Intelligence, patience and courage can change even the most powerful beings. Humans have potential beyond what we imagined, and this maid has proven it." His voice carried through the hall, quiet but firm, silencing any objections before they could be spoken. Ilara felt her heart pound. She had survived the bite, tamed Valix, and now stood as proof that humans could stand alongside dragons as equals. She moved closer to Valix, stroking its massive head, feeling the familiar warmth and energy that had guided her through danger and fear. Valix responded with a gentle hum, almost proud, and the hatchling chirped in agreement. It was a small sound, but to Ilara, it spoke of trust, understanding, and the promise of the future. Some of the rival factions tried to protest, their voices raised in panic and disbelief. But when Valix turned its massive head toward them, calm yet commanding, and Ilara raised her hand slightly, the room fell silent. It was not fear that had taken hold, but respect. The court realized that this human had done what none had dared attempt, and in doing so, had earned their attention and admiration. Over the following days, Ilara's role in the palace changed. She was no longer just a maid, she became the official dragon liaison, responsible for teaching, guiding and forming bonds between humans and dragons. Valix remained by her side, massive and protective, while the hatchling grew under her care, learning lessons no alien had ever taught. Humans were no longer viewed as fragile or weak, they were allies capable of courage, intelligence and empathy. Ilara spent long hours with the dragons, learning more about their instincts, emotions and thoughts. She began to teach other humans in the palace, showing them how patience and understanding could create bonds that brute force or technology never could. Slowly the culture of the palace shifted. Aliens who once doubted humans began to respect them, and the dragons responded with loyalty and trust. Kaler often watched silently from the shadows, proud of the change. He had known humans could be clever and brave, but he had never imagined they could form such deep connections with dragons. "You have done more than survive," he said one evening as Ilara guided Valix through a training exercise. "You have shown the palace that humans are a force to be respected, not feared." Ilara smiled, tired but happy. She looked at Valix, who lowered its massive head toward her, and at the hatchling chirping softly in her hand. The palace had been transformed, not through fire or battle, but through understanding, courage, and empathy. Humans had found their place not below the dragons but beside them as friends, guides, and partners. As the sun set over the palace, casting golden light across the crystal towers, Ilara stood on the balcony with Valix at her side and the hatchling perched on her shoulder. She breathed deeply, feeling the warmth of the dragons and the quiet power she now carried. She had faced fear, survived venom, and built a bond that no one could break. She had proven that humans, small and fragile as they seemed, could achieve the impossible. In that quiet moment, Elara realized that the palace, and the dragons, would never be the same. She had begun a new era, one where humans were no longer servants but allies, where courage and empathy mattered as much as strength and fire. Valix nudged her gently, and the hatchling chirped, a small sound that echoed through the balcony and beyond. Elara whispered, "This is just the beginning," and for the first time she felt that humans, dragons and aliens could truly walk together into a future full of hope, trust and extraordinary possibility. The palace had been silenced by what she had achieved, but it had also been awakened to a truth it could no longer ignore. Humanity's heart was its greatest power, and its courage could change worlds.